They paired us together for a reason. When James was in-house at Baylor, I handled some Baylor matters with him, serving as in-house counsel and outside counsel, so hence the perspective that we have having worked together. So we're going to start with outside counsel's top 5 tips, then in-house counsel's top 5 tips for an effective partnership, balancing budget pressures ethically with internal clients and outside counsel, crafting effective budgets, alternative and ethical fee arrangements. There's your ethics credit, folks. I know you're all very excited about that. And then we're going to talk about key takeaways. All right. So I don't have a drum roll or any kind of great sound effects for this, but I'm going to start with my top 5 tips for an effective partnership. And I will tell you that I have thought about this for a long time, and what you see on the slide is just the beginning. So let's start with number 1, communication. This is a clear one. All of you out there know this. Helps to communicate with your outside counsel. But here's what I've learned that I think is really important for this topic. When it comes to communication, I keep a list. It's in my head now. It used to be written down. My first about communication is, how do you prefer to communicate with us? Do you want us to text you? I have a lot of clients who don't want phone calls. They're too busy. Their email boxes are full. So they might prefer, that I give them a text. Maybe they do like phone calls, but I always want to ask, what do you prefer? How would you like to communicate? What's the easiest, fastest, best way? Next is availability. Communicate about that. Especially for in-house counsel, if you have a standing board meeting, or you have a standing team meeting, or you go out of town every year with your kids for spring break, between X and Y dates, that's great to know. Because I will budget that into anything that I do, whether it's witness interviews, depositions, trial scheduling, anything. If you let us know, that helps, and it helps you too for your schedule. Number 3, communicate about the desired outcome. This is a really simple one, but sometimes it's not. So you say, look, I've got this new case, and this employee is suing us for FLSA violations, and we're really upset about it. We don't like this person, and we're going to defend vigorously. Well, that's music to our ears as litigators, right? We love that. But I prefer to ask, where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? That's one of the first things I'll ask is, what is the desired outcome? Is this a case you really want to settle? Is this a case you want us to fight? Is this a case where you want to take some depositions and see where we get? But knowing the desired outcome is very helpful, especially for our relationship. Next, what are the concerns? What do you know about this case, this plaintiff, this plaintiff's firm? What else is there that's bothering you about this? Do we have a witness you're not real wild about? Is there some other risk factor out there that someone is looking at that's concerning you? Also, let's communicate about what's your risk tolerance. There are some clients, and I think a lot of us know some big names, where they will fight everything. They will never settle anything. But not all clients are that way. So what is your risk tolerance? Let's talk about that. Are you willing to take some risks to see if we can get a summary judgment or we can get an early dismissal? Or would you rather that we just settle because this is a nuisance and you're busy and you don't want to deal with this, you have bigger fish to fry? Let's talk about things like when key witnesses get terminated in the middle of a case. Communication on that issue is huge, and that is a big pet peeve of mine in the employment space, because a lot of times when you have these employment cases come up, you've always got that key manager or supervisor you're going to need. And the worst thing that happens is when we get to the point where depositions are requested and we contact our inside counsel and they say, oh yeah, Billy Joe was fired 6 months ago. Oops. That makes it very difficult for us because we don't have an affidavit from Billy Joe. We don't, they might have been terminated on not so great circumstances. So that doesn't help. So communicate to the extent that we can on witnesses and where they are in the organization. And then understanding the things that you need, you want our permission for. So for example, I have a lot of in-house counsel clients who say, I don't want to see discovery, send it out. And then I have others who say, I want to look at everything that goes out before it goes out. And that's fine. Knowing your preference, telling us what it is you want will make our lives easier and yours too. So these are just some of the things that I think about when I am thinking about how I communicate with inside counsel. Number 2, let's have dinner. I'm not going to read this slide because you all can read that verbiage yourself. For me, it's more like let's go hiking. And I say that literally because I did take an in-house counsel hiking in the Tetons. First time she'd ever been to the Tetons, first time she'd ever been hiking. And when I clipped the bear spray onto the side of her belt and said, be really careful, the look on her face was priceless. But the bigger point was, it was a chance for us to talk about the business, talk about the company, talk about her concerns, and this wasn't on the clock. This was a, let's get to know each other, let's have a fun bonding experience. You know, when a bison came around, if anybody's ever been to Old Faithful, you know, there's a big staging area, and there was a bison that was walking around, and it actually blocked one of the doorways that we were about to enter. So, you know, at that point, it was one of those bonding experiences where it was like, just stand really still and move very slowly. Do not provoke the bison because they're really fast. So, yeah, have dinner, go hiking, do something that's off the clock. It's a great way to get information and, you know, to learn more about the business. Number 3, in-office conferences. Back in the aughts, in-office conferences got a bad rap. And when I first came out of law school, there was a phrase for it. It was called defensive billing. I don't know if anybody's ever heard that phrase before. When I think about it now, I'm not really sure what it meant, but it was basically, let's all hang out in somebody's office and talk, and we'll all bill an hour for it. I think those times have changed. I know they have in my practice, certainly with experience, because being able to walk into James's office, and I have done this and said, look, I've got a healthcare issue. I don't know the answer. I'm an employment lawyer. Have you seen this statute? You know, whatever this is, can you help me with it? You know, Chapter 161, how does this work? And I can get a quick answer. And that is, you know, my feeling on that is, if your inter-office conference is advancing the ball of the case or whatever the matter is, then it is valuable time, and it should be billed. Obviously, the defensive billing, having a cup of coffee, no, not at all. But certainly, if you are forwarding, you know, making progress in a case, sharing information that's faster than doing research, that's worthwhile. Number 4, can I have access? Open lines of communication, this is really important. It is very hard, especially in the litigation context, when there are witnesses and we don't have access to them for whatever reason. Very hard to interview and develop your case when there are people who, oh, they're too busy, or that's a controversial witness, we're not sure we want you to talk to them right now. Makes it a lot harder to defend the case and to even develop strategy. So having access to witnesses is something that, again, we should communicate about, and hopefully we get a chance to have that access that we need. And then number 5, other client matters. What else is going on out there that you think we need to know about? Maybe it doesn't bear directly on the case that we're handling, but it could, and it may be something that we can help with in another way. But it always does help. You know, for example, if you've got some kind of, well, I was just in the other room, you've got some kind of SEC investigation going on, that's probably something you'd want lawyers to know about, especially if maybe a witness that you want to interview is involved in that matter as well. You need to be sensitive to that. So that is also helpful, knowing what is going on in the business. Now James gets to share the other side.
Thank you. And I will say that in my career, one time I have been deposed. I was actually a witness, and it was not fun. I don't know if any of you have ever been deposed, but it's very different being on the other side of that oath. And Alicia prepared me for my deposition, and it went very well. I won't say that I won the case, but I didn't lose the case, right? Which is the goal of any deposition.
He was great, by the way.
Thank you. So this is just a quote out of a book called Deep Work, and it has to do with the busyness of work and how are we focused on the work that we do. And it talks about knowledge workers, people who, like all of us in this room, we're not just paid to do manual labor. We're paid based on the knowledge we have, the wisdom we bring to a situation, not just the nuts and bolts of putting together whatever. And so what can happen if we're not clear on what is expected? What does productivity look like? What does success look like? People will fill that void with doing busyness stuff. And I found myself doing that as an in-house lawyer where all of a sudden my calendar is full of meetings, one after another. And there was never time to step back and do the deep work to really get into my cases and put in the work that I knew as a professional needed to happen. And so I had to take a step back and I had to do what we all should do and what I was not good at initially, looking at what is on my calendar. Do I really need to do that? Does that move the ball in any way for my client? And if it doesn't, I'm going to stop doing it. That is really hard to do. And so I did that for myself, and then I encouraged my team members, the people that I supervised, hey, you know what? We're going to look at all this stuff. And I know you know this, in the corporate world that's hard to do because we're constantly being judged on, do we bring value? What is our value? We need to be visible. People need to see us doing stuff. And if they don't see us doing stuff, then we're just a cost center, as someone mentioned earlier today in one of these sessions. We're a cost center, and how do we justify our existence? I take that same approach when you look at what are we engaging outside counsel to do? What am I wanting from outside counsel? What does success look like? And if we don't define that, what I've found, if you just hire a firm or multiple firms and turn them loose, usually bad things are going to happen to me. I'm going to get an invoice that might be crazy. And then we're going to have a different conversation. So looking at these tips, what communication am I looking for? Some surprises that I've seen. I ran into a few firms that would send me evaluation letters based not on their independent judgment, but on what they thought I wanted to hear. Boy, that is terrible, right? Who does? That's not helpful to me. And we would have a different conversation when I would get that letter and ask, where are you coming from here? This is not what I want to hear. I hired an outside law firm to get an independent, third-party, objective opinion. I already have my opinion. I don't need to hear my opinion coming from you. And some people took that very well, and others didn't get it, and those firms didn't get my business, right? You get a second opinion. You want to know truly and honestly what that lawyer thinks based on his or her experience and background. And then the timing thing. Sometimes I'm preparing for a board meeting, or I'm preparing for some other high-level meeting where I need to have an opinion from outside counsel that's going to bear on the decisions that are going to be made in the meeting. It's not enough, and some people didn't understand this, it's not enough to get that opinion 30 minutes or even a day before the big meeting. I need that opinion from outside counsel far enough in advance that I can have the prep meetings, the pre-meeting meetings. This is how the calendar gets full, but you've got to have the pre-meeting meetings because leaders don't want to hear for the first time in a big meeting in front of a whole bunch of people that things are sideways. So I've got some vetting to do. I've got some sharing to do in advance. And it's important for outside counsel to understand that and for us to have that open communication so that I can lay the timeline to say, yes, the big meeting is on the 30th, but I need this by the 15th, and you can't be late because I've got all these other dominoes that need to fall before decision time comes. Let's have dinner. I like the idea of informal, off-the-clock conversations. You have to be careful here. It was surprising to me how many times law firms they want to do things that are extravagant, and our company rules don't allow that. I can't fly to New York for dinner. I gotta disclose it if I go to a Rangers game, right? So that's all well and good, and I'm glad for you that you have a suite, but I don't want to do that. It's not worth it to me to deal with the internal stuff that I have to do from the ethics rules and the compliance rules of the company. So let's just go have let's have lunch. Let's have a cup of coffee, or I'll come to your office and you come to my office. I found some firms were really good about that. We would have lunch, and it would sort of be a ask me anything session. And we would talk about the cases that were pending that were worrisome. Which were the ones that keep us up at night? Which are the ones that we need to think different strategy? And let's come up with that strategy, and then let's execute. In-office conferences, one of the things about working in the healthcare sector, sometimes I would need to hire multiple firms on a single matter because of conflicts, right? And so that was a very tricky road to walk, because now I've got two firms who are plugged in and working on this matter. Got to do that. It's the right thing to do. But then what you'll see, those two firms, they have to communicate with each other. And so you get a bill where these two lawyers are just talking to each other. And that can be very frustrating from the in-house perspective if I can't see the value of that. What are y'all talking about? Why did you talk to this for an hour and a half? What is going on what am I not aware of that's happening in this case that you guys need to talk for an hour and a half? The other thing that came up in this one particular instance, I would get a bill, and one firm would bill for 30 minutes of conversation, and the other firm billed for the hour and a half. Well, what's happening here? And that ended up causing all kinds of issues for the firm that I thought was overbilling. And the bills are another way to communicate that. I mean, I always reviewed the bills on my matters so that I could see what we were being charged for and whether I thought it was effective. And there were some things that were just maddening. Somebody would go and there would be a 2-hour deposition. Okay, I'm a litigator. 2-hour deposition, that's not bad. It's a 6-hour limit. We left some time on the table. Okay, fine. 2-hour deposition, preparation, depose. The bill for the summary of the deposition was 6 hours. What is that? How can you take 6 hours to summarize a 2-hour deposition? That is, just send me the transcript if you're going to do that, right? And I was taught and trained in law school that the summary was a very brief, as soon as the deposition is over, I'm going to dictate the summary, and it's 3 or 4 paragraphs. What are the major points? And that's it. You might add 20 minutes to the overall bill for that. I don't want some associate reading the transcript and creating this long summary. I don't have time to read that. Can I have access? So when the outside lawyers want to talk to the in-house, to the employees, right? And it depends on the employee and how much time do I have? How much time is it going to take? And I'm managing a docket of cases. I'm not able to attend every single witness interview. I can't go to every single deposition. But what I need, though, is communication from the outside lawyer. Who is coming up for deposition? Who do you want to interview? What is their role in the case? What is their impact if things go sideways, so that I can make an informed decision? Is this a good use of my time or not? We had one case in particular where I was in the dark on some things, which is never a good place to be, and a board member got deposed, and I didn't know about it in advance. That's a problem. And so as outside counsel, I need to know that these things are happening, and I need to be, that board member has expectations of my department and of me, and if I'm unaware, and so I find out the board member got deposed when the board member says, hey, my depo went fine, I can't be in the position of having to say, what deposit? What are you talking about? So communication, I may or may not be able to listen in, but I want the option. I want to know what's happening. Are there high-level people involved? Is somebody looking for an apex deposition? And what are we going to do to quash that, because I'm not putting my CEO on the stand? And then finally, other client matters. What is happening with that particular law firm or that lawyer in particular, the one that I'm hiring, the one that I have the relationship with, the one that I trust with my open matters, it's good for me. It makes me feel better about my decision if I know that this person that I'm hiring here locally is trying cases all over the country or litigating cases all over the country and has a broad practice. And so when you're defending to the board, hey, why did we pick this firm or that firm, I have a ready answer to say this person's experience across the country is as a known entity, a proven defense lawyer in most cases, defense lawyer. I can very easily answer those questions with examples of this is how we know we're doing well. This person is winning cases across the country. I mentioned this just briefly, but we are overhead, right? I don't know if any of you have the luxury of generating revenue for your companies. I've never been in a role as an in-house lawyer where that was my role, although we had a couple of plaintiff cases where we did pretty well. But for the most part, we're just overhead. And just like every department, we have to answer for what we're doing with the company dollar. We don't make money, we cost money. Can we show our value? And that can be difficult to do at times. It's hard to quantify. It's hard to tell the board I spent 15 hours this month in depositions, and how does that help the company? And it's they're expecting a PowerPoint, right? They want to know what's going on and where's your PowerPoint, and how do we as legal justify our existence? So we're going to talk about budgets, and I know there are two different things, right? There's the legal budget. There's the budget that I had for people and supplies and things like that from within the company, which can be a very frustrating process in and of itself. And there were times when the company would say, well, this year we need to cut budgets. Everybody's cutting their budget by 10%. Okay, well, I can't do that, right? My budget is there's not enough flex in a legal budget for a legal department to do that unless you're going to lay people off. We don't spend on outside stuff. We just pay salaries. And so unless you're telling me there's going to be a layoff, then this budget means nothing, and I'm going to ignore it. That's always a fun conversation. When we talk about litigation budgets, though, it's a very different thing. And sometimes the company would want to set a budget at the start of the year. They'd say, okay, your budget for outside counsel spend is, pick a number, $1 million. Well, I can't control how many times we get sued. I can't control how many times the government comes knocking. We've heard about that here today in other sessions. I don't know when a CID is going to land on my desk. And so we can set a budget, but I can't promise you that we can adhere to that budget until we know what we're facing in terms of litigation and outside counsel spend. There are some things I can do management-wise once we're in litigation to try to control those costs, but I can't control how many times, I can't control how many files, and there is a cost associated with each file that is simply just unavoidable. So the tension, outside counsel wants immediate access. Let's start interviewing people, let's gather the documents. Those are all important things, and we want to do that. All of that comes at a cost. From the inside perspective, we're looking at what is the burden on our people, particularly in healthcare. If I have to pull people away from the bedside to talk to lawyers, even for a couple of hours, that causes issues and takes planning. And we can't just pull people from the bedside at random times on a whim. Those have to be scheduled in advance. There's staffing issues. All of that has to be addressed. We're going to get into a few rules. The ABA model rules that play a role in how we structure things, even from a budget, a legal litigation or legal matter budget. And so the lawyer, we've talked about this or heard about this today, the lawyer retained by the organization represents the organization and not the individual witnesses necessarily. And I'm sure you're familiar with the Upjohn warnings. And if you've heard talk about cooperation, what is required to get cooperation today in a government investigation makes all of this very complicated on if the company is going to have to confess and identify all the people who did something wrong in the context of a government investigation, then the lawyer needs to understand his or her role in that and be transparent with each person that you meet with, what you're hired to do and who you represent. And then one of the comments to the rule, our role, and I had to remind some of my colleagues of this, our role is to advise and counsel. We are not, in most instances anyway, we are not the final decision maker. And it can get very personal when you feel like your colleagues are making a mistake, your CEO, your president, someone is making a mistake that is going to down the road cost the company. There may be some risk associated we think is not worth the reward. Nevertheless, it's not our province, and that is hard to do sometimes.
So Rule 2.1 also plays into this balancing act. This is the advisor rule. This is one of my favorites. Every time I see this rule, I can't help but think of Jackie Childs from Seinfeld. It's horrible, it's atrocious, it's tremendous, it's terrible, and he goes off on his litany. It's very funny. If you haven't seen it, I certainly recommend it. He is exercising his independent judgment. I don't know if any of you have seen the coffee incident where Kramer spills coffee on himself and goes to see the attorney to get advice. And he gets a lot more than that. But that is what we are supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be giving independent advice. And that advice can also include the moral, the ethical, political concerns that there may be out there. What kind of social media pressures could there be? What kind of shareholder impact could something have? What kind of employee morale issues might we face if we take a certain action? So being very upfront about that and being candid and being independent is important. On the comment number 5, it says that we may know you don't want our advice, but we may tell it to you when we think it's in your best interest. I always thought that was an interesting comment to that rule, because obviously that would play into budgets. If for example, I knew James didn't want to talk about a particular issue, but I thought it was in his best interest, I would probably raise it and allow him to tell me to stop or continue. But this is the peas or carrots to me. So it's, we got to talk about peas or we got to talk about carrots. Which one do you talk about? Because we can't sugarcoat it. And that is something that I think is really important, especially for outside counsel, is sometimes for me it's my phraseology, you want the good, the bad, or the ugly. This might hurt a little bit. We've got a lot of ways that we can deliver news that's not so great, but sometimes we have to deliver that, and that is just part of what we do.
It was surprising to me how many times the non-lawyers who are hearing information about legal situations, they tend to blame the lawyer. And I would just remind them, we don't make the facts, right? These are the facts. There is no alternative set of facts. They're just the facts. And it's a don't shoot the messenger deal, and that can be, as Alicia said, it can be unpleasant, but we've got to get through that so that we can get to resolution.
All right, so let's talk about crafting effective budgets. I know this is all dear and near to your hearts, right? Yeah, I see it. I see everybody smiling, yes. Okay, so practical pointers. We have to consider scope of work. What are contingencies? What could go wrong? When I think about this topic, I think about concepts. So the concepts that come to my mind are things like, what are the rewards, if there are any? What kind of incentives could there be? What kind of contingencies might we face in a particular case? What kind of staffing do we need when it comes to budgets? Do we need more than one set of counsel? Do we need 3 people on a single plaintiff case? Or do we need 1? Or do we just need an associate? What do we need? And things like what I would call a revisit clause. So when it comes to budgets, it may be that you set a budget, and we heard James talk about how, as inside counsel, you can't control the lawsuits. They come when they come. Maybe we have a budget and it gets revisited. That's something that can certainly happen. With respect to business, obviously it's going to help a lot if your outside counsel understands what you do. I personally, one of the favorite parts about my job as outside counsel is coming to visit you. If you have plants, facilities where people work, show me what they do. Show me how it works. I remember visiting a bottling plant, and there was a room where people were wearing Tyvek suits. And that was the sugar room, and it looked like snow. But it was so toxic you had to wear a respirator in there, and you had to suit up. I had no idea how that worked. But understanding what those people did was really helpful in understanding their business and who had more risk than, this person has more OSHA risk than this person who doesn't work in that environment. And then it's not just about the billable rate, it's about efficiency. That is tried and true. The way I look at this as outside counsel is, I could have an associate draft your summary judgment, and it might take 40 hours. I could draft that summary judgment, it might take me 15. And when you actually average out the rates, it's less expensive for me to do it than it is for them. That's another consideration. Sometimes inside counsel will say, the associate's going to draft it, you're going to edit it, and that's fine. But sometimes that's not the most cost-effective way to do it. And that's something that I would communicate to my inside counsel and say, this is what I propose we do because this is the least expensive option. That's you.
Sure. Taking reasonable efforts to expedite litigation. And this is sort of I think of this as an 80-20 rule. I believe, and by the way, one of the things I did when I was filling my calendar with busyness, a few years ago, I went back to school, and Baylor Law School offers an executive LLM in litigation management. Here's a little plug, fantastic program. If you've got a litigator on your team, I recommend it. And so in that process, we talked a lot about what makes sense in the world of litigation. And the theory is, and I think it's true, that within the first 60 days of getting a new matter, general litigate, not government stuff. We're going to set aside the government stuff because that's a different world. But in most litigation matters, within 60 days or so, you're going to be able to learn about 80% of everything you're ever going to know about that matter. There's an early case assessment process that should get you to about 80% of the facts and information in a very short period of time. And if you are comfortable making a decision based on 80% of everything you're ever going to know, then make a decision. And we're going to end that case. We're going to settle that case. If I know with 80% certainty that this case has a value of X, then here's X and make it go away. Some people are not comfortable doing that, and you've got to find what works for you. Some people want to know 95%. Let's start turning over rocks. We're going to find some things out. Sometimes that works in your favor. You'll turn over the right rock. You'll find out that the plaintiff is a bad person, something we can really use to drive down the value of the case. Sometimes you're going to find out that your own people are not good people. And so your side of things goes sideways. Turning over rocks is it's a time-consuming process. It will teach you more about your case, and it may have a positive or a negative effect, but you can expedite things with an early case assessment process. Learn what you can learn in those first few months, and then make a decision and avoid protracted litigation, and you win in that battle.
So two of my favorite rocks to turn over, by the way, if for your litigation teams, the first would be social media, just surfing around to see what you can find out about your plaintiff. And the second would be always check the bankruptcy records. We have had a case together where it turned out that the plaintiff had filed bankruptcy and hadn't listed the claim, and boy, that's just a gold mine right there. And there's a lot of social media, a lot of kids, and I say kids, a lot of people do not put their social media on privacy settings. So it's very easy to find out information once there's a lawsuit filed about the individuals. It's very helpful. Topic number 5 is alternative and ethical fee arrangements that work. What we're going to talk about here are rules to consider when we're deciding if we're going to do alternative fee arrangements, AFAs. And statistics, and I believe these are from 2022, based on statistics, about 35% of ACC respondents said they pursue alternative fee arrangements. How many of you in this room do that? Show of hands. How many of you hate putting your hands up? I would say I believe that. I believe it's probably at least a third, if not higher. That sounds about right to me. Because the reason is that it works. It can work if you do it the right way.
It was surprising to me how many outside firms were not interested in alternative fee arrangements. They're so attached to the billable hour that their business brain can't function on a flat fee or any other structure other than the billable hour. And that was surprising to me. I think there are ways to structure an arrangement so that the law firm makes money, but the client gets predictability and a savings. I made a pitch in one particular area of litigation to a client. Let's take whatever you spent last year on this, whatever that is. I don't care about the number. And I'll do all of that work for the following year for 10% less. And you get an immediate 10% savings on your litigation costs, something you can show the board how effective you are, right? And the response to that was surprising. No, the whole alternative fee, we're going to get some parameters on costs. It was, they're not ready, and people are just not ready. And so it's going to take some more work and some reassurance, and we'll put some guardrails up. And you have to do that, right? You have to put guardrails up on an alternative fee arrangement for it to work for both sides, so it's fair to both sides. Ethically, we're paid enough that we're incentivized to do the work with lawyers who know what they're doing. Last thing I want to do is hire an army of contract lawyers who I can't really vouch for their training, their education, and their commitment.
So when you're thinking about what'll work, one of the ethical rules you need to think about is competence. I mean, you clearly want to structure something, as James said, that's going to work. It's going to benefit outside counsel, and it's certainly going to benefit inside counsel as well. And the rule is interesting in that obviously a lawyer is expected to know their subject matter. But one of the comments, if you'll forward that for me, one of the comments is that the lawyer can basically study up. Get familiar with the subject matter. That is something that again goes right back to communication where we started. If you want your litigation team to work on something, maybe it's NFTs, they're going to have to get ramped up on that. But if you don't want that, then you might want to hire a different firm or look for a different attorney who's got experience in that realm to start with, because it's going to be really hard to get to some kind of AFA if you don't have people who know what they're doing in the first place.
Fees. What is reasonableness of fees? And that depends, again, on the structure, depends on who you're hiring, what you want them to do. Are you defending a car wreck or are you fighting the SEC? There's a spectrum there, and the range of billable hour rates certainly reflects that. So what skills are required? Is it something that, and I saw this from the in-house perspective, where there were lawyers that we knew possessed a certain set of skills, analytical, maybe that it was outside their area of normal practice, but any lawyer can learn the rules. Most lawyers can dig in, investigate, discover the facts. when you find someone that can take the rules and the facts and analyze and get to the right conclusion very quickly, that's someone you want to work with. And we've encouraged lawyers to expand their scope of practice to help us get in or out of unique situations.
All right, so, and this is also part of the comment, obviously you want to put everything in writing. That makes the most sense. If you don't, and I've been in this situation before where there's been a verbal arrangement and it hasn't gone quite as people had expected or as we had expected, and that causes friction, and that's exactly the place where you do not want to be. Comment 5 talks about you shouldn't enter into an agreement whereby services are to be provided only up to a stated amount when it's foreseeable that more extensive services will probably be provided. That's where you have the revisit clause in your written agreement. We think it's going to be X, and you all know this. A lot of times we're asked, as outside counsel, we're asked, for an estimate, what do you think it's going to cost? And that's a tough one for us too. We know you need that information for your budget purposes, but for us, we also have contingencies as well where a witness pops up we didn't know existed, or the plaintiff comes up with some document that they took that you hadn't seen before. So it is important to do your best, I think, to get that budget right, but to make sure that you have a revisit clause on that as well.
And I did this from the in-house side of things. From time to time, we would say, we want you to, there's been a deposition requested of one of our people in a case where we're not involved, but we've got fact witnesses in our employment. And so we're hiring someone for the sole purpose of preparing and presenting a witness for deposition. And we would state, hey, look, this is a 10-hour prospect and not more than that, unless this witness has some peculiarities, you think they need extra work, they need extra time. Tell us that so that we're prepared for that, and I don't get a bill where you spent a week with someone. I don't want to be surprised by that. I've also done the other side where instead of an hourly expectation, instead of $1, say my budget for this is $5,000. So get it done for $5,000 and figure it out on your end. And if that's not a reasonable number, let's have a conversation. Or if you get to $5,000 and the work isn't done, then explain, let's have a conversation. Tell me why we're not going to meet the budget and what you think the real number might be.
Yeah, so there are all kinds of arrangements, and I think everybody in this room is familiar with most of these: the cap fees, the retainers. Here's the amount we're going to do for a month of work, and you can include what the scope will be. Budgeted hourly billing, so fixed monthly payment amounts. You can also go to things like fixed fees. A flat fee. Those are really common in what I do in the employment context. So for any EOC charge, this is a flat fee, no matter how big it is. And for me, what I do with those is, if it's a flat fee, I will show you all of the billing, all the time spent, and I do that because it allows you, if you ever have the moment to do it, to see if it's efficient for you. So we both have transparency in that where hey, it's really taken them $2,000 to do all of these, but we're getting billed $6,500. We show all the work. We show all the time, so that if there's a need to revisit, we can. And again, that's communication and that's transparency. There's also the chunking of work. That I would call that stages. So through discovery, we'll charge X. Through summary judgment, we'll charge Y. Contingency fees. Not included in here, things like blended rates. That's another way that we've handled different kinds of cases. And I would say, when it comes to AFAs, it's not think outside the box. It's there is no box. Be creative about it. Be smart about it, be tactical about it, have the bumpers that James talked about, but there are a lot of ways to do that. And if you don't like the billable hour, or it's not working for you, or you think there's a better way to do it, I know a lot of outside counsel, maybe not everybody, as James said, but a lot of outside counsel will consider that.
And I liked the chunking model, where you take a case or any legal matter. It's all legal project management, right, is what we're talking about. Anything that you want to do, if you want to merge, if you want to acquire, if you need to handle litigation, it's all legal project management skills, and you can break your project down into pieces or chunks and set prices for each of those. The early case assessment, you know, you can put a price tag on that. Say, I want you to do the early case assessment. I want it done in 60 days. You know, we're contemplating whatever, 10 witness interviews, medical records, business records, whatever the scope might be. We're going to define the scope, and I'll pay you X to do that. And if it goes into deposition phase, then X plus, right, to get the depositions done and expert witnesses, and then on into mediation and trial prep. But you break your matter into pieces, and you assign price tags for each of those pieces. And that is a way for both sides to know what's expected, what the costs are going to be, and then the firm's got to figure out, how do I make it happen within that budget? How do I use the resources of the firm to get that work done to meet the client's expectations? And then contingency, I actually did a blend of these where I had a matter where the initial hire was hourly rate, and it was a plaintiff's case that I was taking on. The initial hire was an hourly rate, and the concept was if we get beyond the motion to dismiss, which we knew would be coming, but if we get beyond the motion to dismiss, then there would be some sort of a blend. We would have a much reduced rate in exchange for a contingency, that if we were successful in recovering $100, the lawyer fee would be some percentage of that. So it's a world where you can be as creative as you want to be. Within the rules of ethics, you need to have lawyers who are going to do the work, who are going to learn what they need to learn about the case, about the issues, to get you to the right results, so that you've got to have that incentive there. But at the same time, it can't be just a windfall, right? It's got to be fair to both sides.
All right, so all good things have to come to an end sometimes, right? So there are times when representation needs to be terminated, and quite frankly, shouldn't be taken on in the first place if the lawyer's not competent to do it. So obviously, when you're thinking about fee arrangements, you want to make sure that that lawyer is the right lawyer for that type of fee arrangement. And that's probably the shortest and sweetest way that I can say that.
Some final takeaways, and I agree with you that there are times when you should just decline. You know, if somebody tried to hire me to be a divorce lawyer, no, I can't do that, right? That would be malpractice out of the gate. And so when those situations arise, we make referrals to other people. So in looking at the partnership between in-house and outside counsel, it's important that we get to know each other, that we have lawyers on the panel who have the skill that we need to represent our business, to understand our business. And from the outside lawyer standpoint, you have to know how your firm makes money well enough to know if you can do a particular deal. That's the challenge of alternative fee arrangements, is some lawyers who've been in the billable hour mode for most of their, if not all of their career, they're uncomfortable talking about a different model where they don't understand how they're going to make money, they don't understand what it might do to the firm's bottom line, and they're just not comfortable. And so having a true partner willing to have those conversations is critical.
All right, so when it comes to billing arrangements, we've talked about being open to new ideas, and I'm going to leave you with this mind-blowing thought that I came up with some late night when I probably should have been doing something else. When it comes to thinking outside of that box or having no box, think about it this way. The glass can be half empty. The glass can be half full. Someone could have stolen your glass. All of the glasses can be yours. Or you might be saying, what glass? There are endless possibilities.
What glass? I'm a what glass person. And finally, our last takeaway is the openness, the transparency that is critical if you're going to have a conversation about establishing a fee arrangement that is other than billable hour. Billable hour requires that conversation to some extent, but we're all just so used to it. It's the custom, it's the norm that we're comfortable with it, and we don't necessarily have those conversations each time. But when you get into the alternative fee arrangement, though, it does require a different level of transparency and a willingness by both the in-house lawyer and the outside lawyer to talk about numbers and profit and budgets in ways that maybe we're not accustomed to. And so, and many of these conversations we would have, and at the end of the day, we'd be right back at the billable hour agreement because we just couldn't come to terms. Either I was uncomfortable with what I thought was a really high monthly price tag or a big price tag for each of those chunks in the project, or outside counsel really couldn't get their head around how they were going to come out okay financially at the end of the day. And a lot of this happened, some of it happened in the pandemic. You know, when the pandemic happened, we had conversations. The courts are closed, right? And so our expectation was all work will stop. I don't want you investigating cases that are going to be dormant for the next who knows how long. I can't afford to spend what I spend on outside counsel at a time when I don't know what the future holds for healthcare, and I don't know what's going to happen to my budget. Well, we had to have those conversations, and it was good that we have relationships with our outside lawyers because they felt comfortable saying, well, wait a minute, if I stop working and stop billing hours, how does my business survive? And great conversations with some great lawyers. We were very fortunate to have partners who understood what we were going through and that we were receptive to what they were going through, and we worked out sort of a middle ground so that everybody made it through.
So at this point, does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
One of the things, I think most of us are maybe just one-man person or two people in the GC role. What I liked about outside counsel is an effective self-assessment when you hear, oh, what you're doing is working because I had another client who finally saw the light, they're doing exactly what you're doing in that. I mean, nothing is better than that. Because when you're dealing in a small environment of lawyers, who else are you going to talk to? I mean, this helps because we speak to other attorneys. But usually, when you're working 10, 15 hours a day, you don't get this opportunity at all. And that's where you have to have that truthful, honest communication between both parties. Because if you're dealing with a GC who doesn't really know what they're doing, how do you go around that and deal with that aspect?
Are you asking?
That wasn't the softball that you promised me. I was expecting. All right, I got you.
So for me, it would be a point of communication and education. So, if I see a case that I think might be relevant to a client, I'll just send it along. Hey, saw this, thought this might be of interest. If it's a general counsel who might not have a lot of experience in employment law, that's where the lunch comes in, or the hike to run away from the bison comes in. Let's go have a chat. Let me give you a primer if you'll let me. Obviously on my dime, but to me that's the only way you can handle it is just to try to educate. I don't know if you think differently, James.
No, I think that's a great question and a great topic, probably for another talk. But if you're fortunate enough to be a GC who's open to information and education from outside counsel, then by all means pursue that. Where you can get a little schizophrenic is you have a GC, and I've seen this, where you have a GC who doesn't know what they're doing, but thinks they know what they're doing. And so they're shopping for an opinion to justify what they want to do, even though what they want to do is not right. And so if you're the GC and you want that outside opinion, but you find that you're on your fourth law firm looking for somebody to agree with you, that's probably one of those, take a pause, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And it's okay if your initial thought turns out to be wrong, adapt, right? We've got to change course, we've got to pivot. And if you're open to that, then more power to you. I think that's the right course.
Anything else? Everybody got the whole glass thing, right? No? All right. Glass half empty, glass half full. Someone stole my glass. All the glasses are mine. And what glass? There you go. There's your takeaway. Thank you.